Where are you watching this from? Is it the warmth of your home, or perhaps on a break at work? Wherever you are, buckle up, because this heartwarming story deserves your full attention. By the time you reach the end, it might just leave you in tears, but it could also restore your faith in kindness. It began on a quiet, rainy afternoon in a little diner tucked away in the streets of Los Angeles, the kind of place where time seems to slow down. The neon sign outside flickered faintly, and the soothing hum of a jukebox in the corner filled the room. People came here to escape the noise of the city, the weight of the world. Keanu Reeves sat quietly at a booth in the far corner. With his unmistakable presence, he could have easily drawn attention, but the actor had no intention of being noticed. This wasn't a visit to grab public admiration. Keanu was someone who enjoyed blending in, observing, and appreciating the everyday moments of life. Today, he was dressed as simply as anyone. A worn-out leather jacket, a dark hoodie, and a pair of old sneakers. Before him sat a notebook and a pen, where he had been scribbling ideas in his unmistakably neat handwriting. Not long after, the door swung open, breaking the tranquil rhythm of the diner. 2 police officers stepped inside. Their uniforms clung wetly to their skin, the rain having clearly caught them off guard. They shook themselves like dogs after a bath, droplets falling onto the linoleum floor, and shared a laugh. The sound was louder than it needed to be, almost too loud for this peaceful space. Heads turned, and people grew too quiet. Keanu's head stayed down. The officers settled into a table close to the actor's booth, not sparing him a glance. The waitress, a smiling woman named Nancy, approached their table. "Welcome, officers. Can I get you started with some coffee?" she asked cheerfully. "Coffee? Sure," one of them grumbled. "But how about you hurry it up? It's been a long day." Nancy's smile faltered for the smallest moment, but she nodded. "Absolutely. Right away." Keanu lifted his eyes only slightly, enough to catch the scene without making it obvious. A gentle crease formed on his brow. He went back to scribbling. When Nancy returned with the coffee, one of the officers gave her an exaggerated sigh. "Took you long enough. Pretty sure if this was Krispy Kreme, they'd have had this out in seconds." The other officer laughed. "Right? What kind of operation are they running here?" Nancy, clearly flustered, said, "I'm sorry, sir. It's just me and Manny in the kitchen today. We're understaffed." "Excuses," one of them retorted, taking a loud sip of coffee. He glanced at Keanu's booth, the scruffy-looking man who'd been quietly minding his own business. "And what's his deal?" he whispered to his partner loud enough for most to hear. "Another out-of-work guy killing time, probably. Bet he doesn't even tip." Keanu's pen froze for a split second, but he kept his gaze down. No sign of anger. No biting retort. Just silence. Nancy returned with their orders of hot sandwiches, balancing the plates carefully. The officers didn't bother with thank yous. They barely acknowledged her as they dug in, chewing loudly and chuckling at some crude joke one of them had cracked. And then, almost as if itching for trouble, one of the officers turned his attention back to Keanu. "Hey, buddy." His loud voice broke through the quiet yet again. Keanu raised his head, those calm and steadfast eyes meeting the officer's gaze. "What's that you're writing, huh? A letter to your parole officer or something?" The man's laugh was sharp, cutting, and meant to provoke. Keanu smiled faintly, but didn't respond. He lowered his gaze again and resumed writing. The officer wasn't about to give up that fast. "Come on, Mr. Mysterious. Cat got your tongue." His partner snickered, egging him on. "What is it? A novel? A grocery list? Or maybe you're writing some manifesto. Should we be concerned here?" Keanu looked up again, but this time there was a softness in his eyes that caught even the officer off guard. "Just some thoughts," he replied simply. "Oh, just some thoughts." The officer mimicked Keanu's calm tone mockingly. "Do you even work, buddy? Or you just sit around all day in diners scribbling thoughts like a poet?" And in that moment, Before Keanu could even utter another word of his humble reply, something happened. Nancy, who'd been quietly watching the ordeal unfold, walked toward Keanu's table with a radiant smile. She placed down a cup of freshly brewed tea he hadn't ordered. "Here you go, Mr. Reeves," she said with such warmth that even the officers turned to stare, their faces betraying various shades of shock. "On the house?" The words hung in the air for a moment, thickening the tension. It was clear those two officers had no idea who they'd just been mocking. Their mouths opened slightly, as if their brains were scrambling to process what they'd done. Mr. Reeves. Keanu Reeves. Hollywood icon, beloved philanthropist, and one of the most down-to-earth celebrities in the world. Keanu, entirely unbothered by their disbelief, smiled up at Nancy in gratitude. "Thank you, Nancy. That's very kind of you." But that wasn't all. Just as the officers were recovering from the shock, one of them noticed something else: the notebook on Keanu's booth. It wasn't ordinary after all. Stamped clearly in bold letters was the word donation, and inside the open pages were lists upon lists of names. And next to those names, dollar signs. Large dollar signs. The officers leaned closer, trying not to look like they were gawking. Keanu noticed them and tilted the notebook slightly so they could read better. "New charity project," he explained in his quiet, humble tone. "Try to help out families in need this season. You know, for housing, meals, enrollment costs for schools." The officers were speechless. The notebook wasn't just a casual list. It cataloged tens of thousands of dollars being donated, and not a word of this from Keanu himself until now. Here he was, being humiliated and mocked seconds earlier, all while sitting there quietly arranging funds to better the lives of complete strangers. Nancy chimed in, unable to hold back her admiration. Any time Mr. Reeves visits, he always seems to have something kind-hearted in the works. Nicest man you'll meet, and such a big tipper, too. Both officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the weight of shame settling in. They muttered apologies under their breaths, as if to reclaim some shred of dignity. But Keanu simply waved it off. "No apologies needed," he said genuinely. "We all have bad days." Silence filled the diner again, but it wasn't tense this time. It felt warm, reflective. Keanu sipped his tea and went back to writing, while Nancy continued her rounds, beaming. The two officers didn't linger long. They paid their tab, stuffing cash into the tip jar, and left hastily, the rain outside soaking them once more. Keanu, he stayed a little while longer. Before leaving, he handed Nancy a sealed envelope. "For Manny and you," he said softly. "Keep doing the amazing work you're doing here." After he stepped out of the diner and disappeared like the rain into the horizon, Nancy opened the envelope. Her hands shook as she stared at the check inside. It wasn't just a tip. It was enough money to cover months of overdue utility bills, and even give Manny the raise he deserved. The officers humiliated Keanu Reeves. But by the end of it all, they learned an unforgettable lesson about humility, kindness, and the surprising ways people reveal their true character. It's never about the loudest voice in the room. It's about the quietest, most gentle actions that speak louder than words. And if this story doesn't make you want to be kinder, maybe the world doesn't deserve someone as deserving of admiration as Keanu Reeves. Where are you watching from? And more importantly, how are you inspired to give back?